Gregg Bell, beat writer for the Seahawks for the News Tribune in Seattle, joins us now to take a better look at this team for the Pacific Northwest. He joins us now on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Greg, welcome aboard. How are you?
I'm well, Mike and Pete. How are you?
Very good, and you can chronicle better than we could. We're watching this team from afar, and many people think this will be the Eagles' toughest test to date, but do you look at this Seattle team anywhere near the team that they faced 1 year ago out there in Seattle?
Well, no, it's completely different, especially on defense. No Richard Sherman, no Cliff Averill, no Cam Chancellor. All three are out for the season with injuries. That alone changes them. Earl Thomas is listed as questionable with a new heel injury, but he's going to play. He just may not be 100%, and he's the last man standing in the former Legion of Boom secondary that's not here anymore. That's the biggest difference on this team. Russell Wilson's doing everything without a running game, without an offensive line providing him constant pass protection. He just takes off and goes in playground mode and has 86% of their yards rushing and throwing this year. So it's really a different team. The Seahawks lead the NFL in pass attempts, which how many times has that been for a Pete Carroll team in the NFL? 0. And Russell Wilson was entered last week as second in the league in yards passing. That's not how the Seahawks want to play, but that's the only way they can move the ball this year, and that is not how the Eagles saw them this time last year.
Yeah, and the one thing, I remember that game last year, ProSize, I think it was, had that big 70-yard run early in that game, and that kind of set the tone. The Eagles are way different stopping the run than they were a year ago, and Seattle's way different in terms of running the ball, are they not?
Completely different. The running backs, if you take out Russell Wilson's scramble, Wilson has 401 yards rushing, leads the team, 200 more than anybody else on the team. And 380 of those yards, or 350 of those 400 are scrambling. And if you take out his scrambles, the Seahawks are 20th in the league in rushing. If you take out his scrambles, they'd be dead last, 32nd. The running backs, Eddie Lacy, Thomas Rawls, J.D. McKissick, Mike Davis, a former 49er, have all done nothing. They haven't had much blocking either. The standard run game has not been able to produce anything because, one, there's just too many men in the backfield, and they, two, don't have the Marshawn Lynch backs that can just run over guys and create their own yards. It's not there. The only rushing, again, it looks deceptive to see that Seattle's 20th in the league in rushing because the only rushing they've had all season is Russell Wilson taken off away from pass rushers on pass calls.
So, Greg, if they don't run the ball that well, then who's the guy that Eagles fans should pay attention to in the passing game? Who's the guy Wilson looks to when he's running around back there like, oh, gotta find him?
Well, in the middle of the field, and especially on third down, it's still Doug Baldwin. He's been great. He leads the team in catches and yards, and he's the third down threat. He's constantly making plays, and he is so good at reading when Wilson scrambles on where to go. He is as good as on his improvisational routes as Wilson is in his improvisational scrambles to buy time to throw. Then once they get inside the 20, for the first time in 3 years, first time since he's been here, Jimmy Graham is finally doing why they brought him to Seattle from New Orleans. 8 touchdown catches in the last 7 games, all of them in the red zone, all of them when they have split him out, matched him up one-on-one in mismatches. He's a 6'7" former college basketball power forward, as most of you know. And there's nobody in the league that can guard him outside one-on-one. It's a physical mismatch. And finally, Russell Wilson has gotten good at recognizing and throwing to Graham, even when he's covered, and putting the ball in the area that only Graham can get. So those are the 2 places the Seahawks will go most. Now, Paul Richardson, who wasn't much in the Seahawks' plans this time last year when the Eagles played him, has emerged as something of a second receiver and some on third downs as well. Richardson, number 10, a downfield threat, a former second-round pick from Colorado, a real speed guy who has not been able to stay on the field his first 3 years with all kinds of injuries, finally healthy this year. And when Wilson doesn't go to Baldwin on third down, he goes to Paul Richardson.
Gregg Bell with us, the Seahawks beat writer for the News Tribune in Seattle. So, Greg, that offensive line for the Seahawks, is it any better than it was early in the season? Because the Eagles' pass rush, as I'm sure you know, is pretty good. Are the Eagles' pass rush, are they going to win that battle against that O-line?
Yeah, they'll win the battle. The question is, will they bring Russell Wilson down? The 49ers won that battle last week and didn't sack Wilson one time. They must have gotten 50 hands on him, yet never brought him down. And that's the way it's been all year, is that every team almost has gotten to Russell Wilson. It's just Wilson gets away from him. Last week was the first time since 2015 this team did not allow a sack. But again, that was not because of the offensive line doing its job on every pass play. It was because of Russell Wilson getting away. To answer your question, the line's better because they have Dwayne Brown here from Houston. They traded for him last month, the 3-time Pro Bowl, 1-time All-Pro. Instantly made them better and more experienced, a 10-year vet at left tackle. I mean, they had a former college basketball forward, undrafted George Fant there, and then they had Reese Odiambo, a middle-round draft pick last year, who used to be a backup guard. Those are their 2 left tackles the last 2 seasons until Brown got here. So that instantly made them better. They're still not great. Germain Ifedi has had a real problem, the first-round pick from 2016, a real problem on the right end at right tackle, repelling edge rushers, with having to resort to holding because his feet aren't quick enough, false starts. He's the most penalized player in the league. The Eagles have a huge advantage off their left edge against Germain Ifedi, and the Seahawks have had to use even Jimmy Graham at times to try to help Germain Ifedi at right tackle, and it hasn't worked. So if I was Fletcher Cox and everybody else in Eagles white on Sunday night, I'd be rushing off the left defensive end.
All right, Gregg Bell's with us, covers the Seahawks. I see Seattle about a touchdown underdog. Has that been something they noticed this week?
Oh, yeah. They won't talk much about it. This team has a lot of pride, and like most pro athletes, especially the Seahawks veterans, they want to go seek chips on their shoulders where they can get them. And whether it's manufactured, perceived, real, they notice this is the largest underdog. The Seahawks have been at home since 2011. Baltimore that year was a 7-point favorite. That was the midst of the second year for Pete Carroll and John Schneider's regime here. They were completely overhauling the roster with 300 roster moves a year. And that's the last time they were this big of an underdog. They haven't been an underdog of any kind at home since 2012. So that in itself is unusual, and to be a touchdown underdog shows the perception. Of course, the betting line is not the prediction; it's what they think the people are going to bet and what the money chases. And that's the perception that the Seahawks are done, that they've faded, and the Eagles are the new hot thing in the NFC, and that the Seahawks injury have caught up to them, and they are old and has-beens, and they've been talking about it this week. KJ Wright, the linebacker, Pro Bowl linebacker, said, "Don't sleep on us." I know people are sleeping on us. Don't sleep on us. We still have great football to play, and we still have great experienced players. The problem is there's just so many of those great experienced players that are hurt and out for the year that this is not the same team that's been to the playoffs 5 years in a row. They may get there this year, guys, but it's not the same team at all, especially on defense.
Yeah, and not suggesting that Pete Carroll would be on a hot seat or anything, but how many more years is he going to be leading this team? He's the oldest coach in the league, right?
He is 65, and he has got a license from Paul Allen, the team owner out here, to coach as long as he wants. If he wanted to coach into Marv Levy in years, in his mid-70s to 80, he could. It's up to him. The thought out here always was that something in Los Angeles would attract him to go back. He still has a lot of philanthropic interest down there, a home down there, and all kinds of ties down there. But when the Rams went another way with Sean McVay, when the Chargers went another way, when they moved from San Diego, that kind of got the feeling here in Seattle that maybe he is here to stay. He told me a couple years ago he wanted to coach 10 years total in Seattle, up until he was about 72, 73 years old. So we still got 7 or 8 years to go until that. I will tell you that he can coach as long as he wants to. He's the only coach to win a Super Bowl here, and he turned a franchise around in short order, and he's got a blank check to stay as long as he wants.
And he definitely seems to have that Dick Vermeil fountain of youth. You know, is there a good feeling out there overall, would you say, Greg? Do you think the people out there think Seattle can win this game?
No, there's not a good – among fans, there's not a good feeling. It's a feeling that they're going to get boat raced by the hottest team in the league because of their defense. The hope that this team has, I even think the players inside the locker room believe this, is that they think their best player, Russell Wilson, is better than Philadelphia's best player, whether that's Carson Wentz or anybody on the defense. Right now it probably is Wentz. You would know more than I. But they think that Russell Wilson is better than Wentz. He's more experienced. He's been there. He's won games in December like no one else in the league. Primetime games, 21-4, on and on. They think that if they can stay in the game long enough to make it a fourth quarter game, which at home they should be able to do, that they think Russell Wilson alone can win this game. And I tell you guys, Russell Wilson alone has won almost all of the 7 games the Seahawks have won this year.
He's one of my favorite players to watch. He's forced the Seahawks, not forced them, he has made them probably the most consistent NFC team since he has taken over there in 2012. Gregg Bell covers the Seattle Seahawks. The Eagles will be there Sunday Night Football. Listen to the coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. We appreciate it, Greg.
Pleasure talking to you guys. Have a good weekend.